Welcome to another episode of Happening Hoops Chats. Today I am joined by Coleman Crawley, otherwise known as SharpShotSelect. And he has been going around the country, traveling all over and seeing a different mid-major college basketball game pretty much every single day for the past, month and a half, month plus.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, Coleman, for joining me today, and looking forward to talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. Excited to continue to tell my story.
Yeah, I know. Glad that we could fit this in. It seems like you've been getting a lot more media attention lately.
Yes, which has been good, grown exposure, and then also just more exposure to these kids that are doing such a great job at these small and mid majors.
Yeah. So, I mean, just kind of the first question, what inspired you to go on this journey?
Yeah, so I guess a couple years back during COVID would probably be the original inspiration. I'm part-time bracketologist. Joe Lunardi inspired me, right? And so that 2019 season, or sorry, 2020 season, I'd been doing my bracketology all year long. Then we get that tournament canceled. The committee announces they aren't even going to reveal the seed list. So I was like, man, all this work all year for absolutely nothing. I've got to put something into it. So I decided, we had a lot of free time, especially initially those first couple of weeks of COVID. So I decided to use that free time, put it to good use, record about a 2-hour selection show where I acted both as the selection committee and then also like Seth Davis, Greg Gumbel, those guys, making my picks on my field of 68, who I think would win it based how they're playing, when that season ended March 12th, whatever it was. I got a ton of positive responses from that, from random people on Twitter, some people that had responded back that were in the industry. Matt Norlander was one of them, people like that, that were really, I guess, excited at what I had made and thought that I'd had somewhat of a talent in it, that I should keep pursuing it. So from there, I kind of decided to half-fast it. I don't know how better to describe it, but to make a podcast and then continue to do my bracketology and do my gambling picks and hope I would create a platform by doing that. I quickly realized, okay, I'm not going to be able to do my job and this and be
Mhm.
able to have the utmost success in both. So I decided at the end of the year, I thought of this back in the summer, that I was probably going to quit my job or talk with my boss, see if somehow I could keep my job and pursue this. But I saw a high level of basketball being played at the small and mid-major level. And specifically, what got me to jump into this journey was looking at this past summer, the average attendance numbers of every D1 school. St. Peter's averaged 526 people at their home games. They made the Elite Eight. So I
Mhm.
thought, okay, there's less people at some of these games than were at my high school games. I can get behind the bench or behind the goals of these games down low, get good footage from my iPhone, place a bet on the game, and hopefully that content will draw eyes, draw attention. And that's what's happened, I guess, so far to this point. But yeah, just the lack of exposure that mid and small majors were receiving, or the lack of care until mid-March, until they win a couple games. Yet these teams are playing great ball in January and February that needs to be noticed and needs to be promoted.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I'm someone who, I kind of found college basketball at a young age and then got really into it, during my college years. But I agreed, a lot of these mid-major programs, nobody really hears about them until March. And even then, it's only if you win your conference tournament, and usually
Right.
only if you win a game in the NCAA tournament. But, you're really shedding a light on all of these teams that most of which, let's be honest, are not going to be in the big dance.
Absolutely. I mean, for 21 conferences, I want to say for outside the Power Six and outside the biggest five mid majors, there has only been one at-large bid in the last decade. That was Belmont back in 2019 when they got in, and even they were a surprise. So for 21 of our 32 conferences in college basketball, their conference tournament is their NCAA championship, essentially. And then
Yep.
after that is just icing on the cake. Let's see if we can make a little run in the NCAA tournament. But I just love that battle for those 2 months of January and February of we're grinding to play our best basketball by March so we can get hot, win a couple games in our tournament, and then let's see what happens in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, I personally am a both a Valpo and Loyola Maryland fan. I went to Valpo and then, I've grown up a Loyola Maryland fan. And in recent years, for both my programs, we, we haven't been very good, A. And then B, we did make a run to our conference tournament, championship game in 2020 for Valpo and 2021 for Loyola. And I mean, neither time did they end up winning it and going to the NCAA tournament. But for those few days, I was getting so excited and
Oh,
like I just like was on cloud nine. And then obviously the
right.
letdown of when I was on the phone with one of my buddies from Valpo, and we were planning, like what flights and hotels we were going to stay at for Valpo when they won. And then in the second half, things things didn't go our way, but there's just so much excitement around the conference tournaments because you're like, if we just
Absolutely.
get a chance to get the March Madness, like who knows?
Absolutely. And kudos to your Valpo boys right now. They're playing some really good basketball. Even when they're not winning, they lose in overtime to Missouri State, I think, the other night, but they are very competitive right now.
Yeah, yeah. And then I mean, like this is fantastic what you're doing and traveling all around. I think
Thank
the
you.
average person, watching though would be like, how in the world does he finance this? Because I know I personally would love to go and, travel. That's a bucket list trip. Like if I could just take a week off for vacation, go around to a ton of mid-major games, see some cool arenas, some great environments. But how have you been able to live on the road for over a month?
Yes. So I worked in sales before this for 3.5 years. And so I had a base salary, but a decent portion of our income comes from commission at a couple times throughout the year. And so one of those being at the end of the year, and that's typically when we receive our most commission. So I knew that I guess once I got this in my head that this is what I was going to do, that okay, with that sales commission, that will keep me afloat for the next couple months. And I'm just going to bet on myself and hope that I can land a full-time gig, something like that in this space afterwards to where I'll have a job in March and be fine. But in full transparency, if I don't, and I still haven't landed anything full-time, then,
Mhm.
I'll be back after Selection Sunday to finding another job in sales. But I've enjoyed this so much. I imagine I'm going to be doing something in this space for the rest of my life, even if for 8.5, 9, 10 months of the year, I'm working an odd end job to supply these 2.5 months. I'm willing to do that. It's been an unbelievable blast.
Yeah, and that's really just so cool because it's like oftentimes, we as people have these dreams, but to see you so publicly pursuing yours and really, I watch all the videos that you put out, like just really
Thank
truly
you.
enjoying it. Like
Oh, I am.
kudos to you. I mean, that's really incredible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And words like that, that others have said without a doubt keep me going. There are times where it's a grind, but truthfully, I'm enjoying it so much every single day that I don't even get focused. It's not a, for others, an outsider's perspective, it may seem like a grind, but I'm enjoying it so much that it's not a grind for me. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, we could talk a little bit about that kind of long-term prospect. I know most people probably found out about you from it was a job at Barstool that you were trying to get, and you actually
Yes.
went on and they like spun a wheel where it was like 1 out of 10 slots on the wheel was like get hired, and it landed on that. They didn't hire you though, but
Correct.
what was that process like? And moving forward, what do you is that still the dream job or somewhere else? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's still the dream job. I'm open to other opportunities without a doubt. But I guess back in the summer when I'd originally thought of this idea, it was like, okay, I'm gonna try to get my foot in the door to where people already know what I'm about to do. And Barstool was who I'd specifically thought would be perfect for my content and what I planned on doing. So I waited outside Barstool headquarters. I took 2 days of vacation this summer. My wife had work up in New York City, so I went with her for that and just loitered outside headquarters, essentially like a homeless person, because I was like, they're gonna have to come down at some point, lunch, leave for the day, whatever. And so Big Cat comes walking down after like 2, 3 hours of waiting down there. And so I chase him down a couple blocks, finally catch up to him. I think he thought I was just going to be a fan asking for a picture. It's like, hey, Big Cat, you need a personal college basketball handicapper. I don't want a job now, but I'm going to prove myself to you. I've got an idea coming this winter. He's like, okay, I'll give you a follow and check you out. So then after 2 weeks of doing that grind, and I'd gone to like 14, 15 games at that point, I was going to Fordham Dayton. So I was like, okay, during that day before, I'm just going to wait outside headquarters again, message Big Cat, let him know I'm down there. So I do just that. He sends me back like, hey, I don't think we're looking at hiring right now. And
Hmm.
so I'm about to leave. I actually do. I walk a block or so down the road, and then he sends back, but do you want to come on for like a 3-minute elevator pitch on the Yak? I'm like, are you kidding? Absolutely. So I get on. I'm just expecting it to be 3 minutes. It ends up turning into like 15. They do
Hmm.
the hire wheel. It lands on hired. And I did hear Big Cat. He did say that, hey, this doesn't guarantee, but I'll do everything in my power to, elevate it to people that can make those decisions, Dave. Um, and so it was a surreal experience. I was trying to pretend like I guess I belonged, so I wasn't trying to get too caught up in the moment and really get across the value, I guess, of my journey.
Hmm.
But an incredible experience that created exposure that I didn't dream of having 2 weeks in, that even though I didn't get hired, it's given me so many other opportunities now. I can't unveil full details yet, but I will be a reoccurring guest for a podcast upcoming where I'm getting paid to do that will help my financial situation quite a bit. And
Yeah.
definitely I couldn't have
I
done it
saw, I
without
saw
that
you were on,
marketing.
like, it was like the Bobby Bones show or something. Really, that was, pretty
Yes.
big.
Yes. Yeah. Um, it's in relation to that, but yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What's up,
Well, I
Coach?
don't want to, spoil the surprise then. But
Yes.
let's get into some of like the actual teams or the venues. And I feel like you've been to, we'll start with the Patriot League. I am pretty well versed in the Patriot League.
Yeah.
I feel like you've been seeing a lot of Patriot League basketball, and I mean, my Hounds this year are just they're struggling. You were there for like one of the two games that I wasn't there this year. It was kind of
Really,
unfortunate,
really.
but yeah, but I mean, Colgate, obviously the kind of team to beat. I tell everybody every year, like the league runs through Hamilton until further
Mhm.
notice, until they
Yeah.
show us otherwise.
Last half decade.
Yeah, essentially. And you've seen them a fair amount. You've seen other Patriot League teams. What's your take on the league this year? You were just there when they lost to American, which shows that I guess they are beatable. But granted, that was on
Right.
the road and all the conference tournament, unless they fall apart down the stretch, looks like it's going to be up there at Cotterell Court.
Right, right. No, I definitely think just by the scores that I've seen and then watching them against American, I don't think they're playing as high a level of basketball as they once were. Maybe
Hmm.
earlier in the Patriot League, they're scoring a lot more in the 60s, which is, pretty unlike them with as prolific as they can be as a shooting team and moving the basketball. Um, to be honest, I feel like a little bit of that was the streak that they were holding, a 26 game winning streak, 11-0 start to Patriot League play. It's very easy to, I think, be focused on that and almost be playing tense because of it, rather than we just need to be trying to improve to be playing our best basketball by March. So now that the streak's gone with that loss to American, I look for them to improve from there. But no, they're not playing their best basketball right now, but still, best 3-point shooting team in the country. They're so unselfish, play so well together, move the ball ridiculously well. Yes, I've been to 6 Patriot League venues now, so have seen quite a bit of Patriot League ball. But I mean,
Yeah.
the story on Colgate and why I followed them so much. I was excited to watch them already, just with, you'd mentioned that they've been running the Patriot the last few years. They're a prime candidate to be Cinderella with their shooting ability. And I wanted to see that ball movement. But then selfishly, TikTok algorithms were loving them. And so I was like, okay, I need to keep going back to keep getting more exposure because clearly people are loving Gate. So
Hmm.
that's kind of why I'd gone to so many games. But God, I love watching them play.
Yeah, and some of these teams too in leagues where they kind of you know just have a stranglehold on the league year after year. It seems like Colgate in the Patriot League or
Mm-hmm.
Vermont in the American East. Though this year I think they're a little bit more vulnerable. I feel like
Yeah.
with those types of programs, it's like they get to the NCAA tournament every year or almost every year, and you get to a point where that's just kind of expected, and you wonder when's going to be the year that they break through and win a game. And I mean, a lot of it depends on matchup and who you draw. But do you think Colgate is capable this year of maybe upsetting one of the top seeds?
Absolutely, I do. I got to looking into the resume a little bit. So this Monday, where I have the day off, I'm gonna deep dive and do some bracketology, record a podcast with that. But they've got a pretty weak resume, to be honest. Didn't
Mm,
get, I mean, they do have the one win over Syracuse, but that's about all that's great within their resume. So I could see this team being a 14 seed, which kind of they've been in the past. I
yeah.
had thought just from the talent I was watching, they'd be a 12 or a 13. So they are going to be a very dangerous 14 seed if that's what they're seeing, or that's what they are. And absolutely, they have a chance to pull off an upset just because of their 3-point shooting ability. I watched them against your Greyhounds go 14 of 23 from three, shoot 67% from the floor, put up over 100 points. It was the most beautiful display of offensive basketball that I've seen on this entire journey so far.
Hmm.
So even with great defense, Colgate sometimes has an ability to just knock down difficult shots, and I am certainly not wanting to draw them if I'm a fan of a power 6 3 seed or something like that.
Yeah.
And sorry to address another one of your
No,
points. You
go
talked
ahead. Go
about
ahead. Yeah.
Colgate in Vermont. I think part of that, and I do love how there's so many different formats for the conference tournament. Some of them don't
Hmm.
allow everyone in. Some of them it's campus site. Some of them combo campus and neutral. I
The Ivy
like
League only takes like the top four.
right.
It's just
I
different everywhere. Yeah.
I like the mix of that, but I think that's part of why Vermont and Colgate have been able to dominate and
Hmm.
punch their bid is because they're in leagues where the number one seed gets home court advantage,
Yeah.
throughout the
Yeah.
remainder of that conference tournament. So that's a big advantage for Colgate and Vermont, who you'd mentioned.
Yeah, and I would say probably the same. I mean, there's not actually, it's really only a handful, I'd say, where it's exclusively all, new home sites
Campus.
for
Yeah,
conference. Yeah,
yeah,
campus sites. Liberty, I'd say, is another one you could maybe throw in there. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I think like the NEC is another one that does campus sites, but I feel like there hasn't been a dominant team there, year after year, and especially
Yeah,
now that Mount St. Mary's and Bryant have left. But that's going to
yeah.
be an interesting one, I think personally, just because Merrimack is playing really well, and that could be a situation where if someone faces Merrimack in the title game, you only need to win 2 games to then get the automatic
Yeah.
bid.
Well, Stonehill too, right?
Yeah, yeah, Stonehill. Yep,
They're
yeah.
playing well.
I don't think Stonehill's allowed in the conference tournament.
Oh, tournament. Yeah.
Merrimack's allowed in the conference tournament, even though they're still transitioning. But right now,
Okay.
at
Yeah, I
least
think you're right.
I don't know, at least a few days ago, I'm not sure if it's the case right now. I think Merrimack was in first, so it would run through Merrimack. But yeah, we'll see. There's still time left to go in that one.
Yeah, that's a gosh. I mean, I hate to talk poorly of. I try to speak highly of everyone that I go see, but
Yeah,
wow, I went to Wagner in St. Francis, PA, which St. Francis, PA does have a very good player in Josh Cohen. He may be the best player in that conference. But God, that was an ugly basketball game, and that's two of the better teams in the
yeah, yeah.
NEC. I mean, geez, that's a play-in conference for sure this year.
Yeah, I used to see, at least a little bit of NEC basketball. I would always try to go if there's a conference tournament game over at Mount St. Mary's, which is only about an hour away from me. And I think maybe this year I'll try to get the one, but I think the closest one's like 3 hours to me. So for you, that's
Oh,
probably, you're like, 3 hours. That's
yeah.
that's a nice easy day's drive.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, so let's talk about it. I mean, because you've been all over, everywhere from, as you said, Wagner to Wichita and Western
Yes.
Carolina to Dayton. And what are some of the better arenas or environments that you've been in? And then on the flip side, maybe some of the worst. You're one of the few
Yeah.
people I would say that has driven hours out of their way to go to Mississippi Valley State.
Yes. Yes. I would say up at the top, it's definitely would be A10 conference teams.
Mhm.
Just granted that level of mid-major is higher than a lot of these other small and mid-major conferences, but Dayton was the top venue that I've been to. Just the way that town supports basketball, college basketball in particular, is so fun to watch. They absolutely deserve the first 4 games. Just incredible, the support that town has. Even when they're not tremendous, they still go
Mhm.
support. VCU, the Siegel Center, another A10. wow, that place gets loud. They have the best band that I've seen so far. The band
Okay.
conductor gets into
Yeah.
it as well. That was a ton of fun. A venue that might surprise some people. That was my third favorite venue that I've been to so far. North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. Going to an HBCU game was a culturing experience for me. I absolutely loved it. The TV timeouts in the half times are a party, essentially. I
Okay.
mean,
Yeah.
everybody up dancing, rapping to the lyrics, whatever the case may be. I did not have more fun at a game that I've been to so far in all 2 hours than at North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. Had a blast of a time, and I hope that school still goes out to support. But what's great about it, I mean, NCA&T's 500, I want to say, in the Colonial this year, and to have a sellout like that, I love when you have programs that continue to support regardless of the product that they're seeing on the floor, that there's still that support within the community there.
Yeah. And, looking forward, moving ahead, I think you tweeted out a little bit of what your schedule is going to be like. Is there any place in particular that you haven't been to yet that you're really looking forward to getting to?
Yeah, I'm really excited to go to Charleston, so I'll be doing that Wednesday. When I did my original process of planning for all of this, I ranked every school by their conference by average attendance. And so there were a few schools that I thought I'm not going to be able to go to that game, Dayton, VCU being a couple of them, because
Hmm.
they sell out or near it.
Yeah.
And to get the best footage or content, I need to be down low. And so it's going to be very difficult for me to do that in these sold out arenas. Charleston was one of the few that were outside, I would say, those big five of mid major that I marked off my list as not being able to go until the post Big Cat, yak exposure that created people reaching out to me, wanting me to come to their venue. So Charleston was a place I'd originally marked off because they get too much support, frankly, for me to be able to attend, but
Hmm.
now will be able to. So extremely excited to see them, even though they've been struggling a little bit these last couple games, part of which I'll take fault for. Felt like I caused the loss to Drexel, but still the year that they're having, I feel like that's going to be an awesome environment.
Yeah, yeah. Them, and I think like Florida Atlantic, and then like the top half of the Mountain West. I know it's harder for you to get out west, but I feel
Yes.
like all of those ones have been, the cream of the crop of mid majors, and
Yeah,
I
I
expect to
know.
perform well in March.
I hope to still be doing this next year, as I mentioned, but I would love to get out west because, yes, I'm loving seeing those venues of the Mountain West. The
Hmm.
WAC even is doing a
Yeah,
great job having people get out and attending. I think Grand Canyon,
Grand
probably
Canyon is a bucket
accelerates
list
that.
place for me. Like I
Yeah,
just
absolutely.
for it's been for a few years. I kind of developed a tradition because when Chicago State was in the WAC, they were only like an hour away from Valpo. All
Oh,
four
yeah.
years, I went to the Grand Canyon at Chicago State game, and it was
Okay.
kind of adopted as like an Antelopes fan, and they would give me like
Yeah.
free swag. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, sorry, I forgot to answer the second part of your question previously. The worst venues,
Oh yeah.
Wagner's number one, had less than 500 people in attendance. I think I mentioned in the video, it looks like your third grade nephew is about to be running out there to have their, Saturday league game. But
Hmm.
no, it's a Division I basketball team that could win the NEC and could
Yeah.
punch through ticket to an NCAA tournament playing in a venue like that. And then I'm sorry, but your Patriot League had
Oh.
a lot of the lower venues. And I combine, it's not just, the arena. Like, for
Hmm.
example, Top of the
Yeah.
State had a really nice arena,
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
in Baltimore. But God, there was just no support there, which I hate to see.
Hmm.
So part of it is just in the Northeast, I guess, bigger cities, people got better things to do. I don't know what the issue is, but most of the Northeast is poorly attended compared to the rest of the country.
Yeah, yeah, that's one thing I've noticed from living in the Midwest and going to a ton of college basketball games out there, and then living back here, and still going to a fair amount of games. It's just I don't want to say it's quite night and day, but there's a lot more support for college hoops. I feel like in other regions of the country than the Northeast.
I mean, I couldn't believe it when I went to Colgate, Loyola, Maryland, and then the second time I'd gone to Colgate at Lehigh.
Hmm.
that this is a team that, as you mentioned, has been running the Patriot League for the last half decade. I mean, Tucker Richardson, I think he's on his 5th year there, and they seem stunned to have someone standing for them the entire time, yelling out, knowing all their names and things like that. So I was like, man, you guys play such incredible basketball, yet you're surprised, baffled by this support. That
Yeah.
to me was almost sad. And part of the problem that I'm trying to play a small part in fixing.
Yeah, yeah. And my hat goes off to you for that. I mean, when I was at Valpo, I really enjoyed my time there, and myself and a couple of my friends, we would stand in the front row. I loved the art because people would always hate on it because it was old and outdated, and it was in a way. And especially when we moved up to the Missouri Valley, it wasn't quite up to the arena standards that other places were. But
Mm.
the part that I loved about it was you could stand in the front row of the student section, your feet on the hardwood, 5 feet
Yeah,
from the end of the visiting bench, and just be in their ear like all night long. And I mean,
absolutely.
we always like we kept it classy and everything, but like you throw them off their game or make them laugh. Or like,
Hmm.
honestly, just yell. One time, my buddy was on the opposite end of the arena. He said I could pick out your voice on, distinctively out of the whole crowd. And I was like, well, if the bench is that close, I mean, I must be really annoying them. And I mean, we had
Yeah.
our shticks. We made like individual signs for each opponent. We had like, figured out who the last guy on the bench was and yelled to coach to put him in. He wants to play. So I
Yeah.
just seeing all of your antics like just really brings me joy that you're out there having fun at the games because that's what it's supposed to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I appreciate those anecdotes because that that's what I'm seeing right now. And I would say, primarily it's led by bands.
Mm-hmm.
Bands that I've been Delaware, I want to shout them out. Temple, I want to shout them out. That they specifically will just all game long do exactly as you described. Be on the bench, be yelling at a particular player that's a bench warmer. Hey, coach, put them in. The bench warmers laughing about it. I mean, they
Yeah,
can't help
yeah,
themselves. They're hearing it. But I love that as long as it's done, in a fun, classy way, which most of the time it always is. Yeah, that makes it fun.
yeah, absolutely. So just kind of wind it down here. I mean, do you have anything? Where can people find you? Let them know.
On Twitter and TikTok at SharpShotSelect is where to find me. And that's where I post the games that I'll be going to. I post my picks and then as well as just reviews of those games, the venues that I was at, and the teams I saw play.
Excellent, excellent. And I saw you at the Vermont UMBC game. That's where we first met. And then I
Yes.
actually was at Asheville for the Radford game that you happened to be at. We were on
Oh, really?
vacation. I went there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I got there at like the 16-minute mark of that one because I was coming over from Western Carolina, but late in the
Yeah. So
second
we
half.
crossed paths a couple. I know you came to Coppin, you came to Towson. I unfortunately wasn't able to make it those ones. I did see though on your upcoming schedule, you're looking at Maryland Eastern Shore Howard, which I'm also looking at.
Yes,
So hopefully we'll be able to connect at that one as well. But you know, th-
absolutely.
yeah, thank you, Coleman, for taking the time to come on and share your journey and share your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the increased exposure.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been Happening Hoops Chats. Thank you for tuning in.